On September 4th, my 3 Days to Smoother Bedtime challenge will kick off. And this is going to be the third time that I've hosted this free challenge, and I can't wait for it to start. If you have a child between 2.5 and 6 years old and you've been dreading bedtimes because your child resists, stalls, or is falling asleep at some crazy late hour, then this challenge is for you. You can find the link to register in the show notes. And today I'm chatting with a mom who participated in our challenge back in April. And I can't wait for you all to meet Jessica and hear about her experience with going through the challenge for her son. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. Well, hi, Jessica. It's so good to see you. You have been part of the sleep and wellness community for quite some time now, and I'm excited to have you on the podcast. And I would just love to start by having you share a little bit about yourself and your family.
First, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you today. My son, when we did the challenge, he was 2.5, but he's actually turning 3 this coming weekend. So we're excited about that. And my husband and I are both full-time working parents. I'm a marketing manager at a law firm, and my husband is a dean of students at a college in Boston. So we're both very busy. We both have a hybrid schedule, so we're able to work from home and also work in the office. Leo is in daycare 3 days a week, and then our parents each watch him 1 day a week. So he's got the best of both worlds in that regard. We live in Saugus, Massachusetts, which is just north of Boston, about 20 minutes north of Boston. And we have very close family and friends around us, so we're always busy doing something with them. So
I love that you have the village.
we do. It takes a village, absolutely. And we have it, thank God.
That's awesome. And I cannot believe he's about to be 3.
Yes. And we've been working with you since the very beginning. Since he was a newborn, I signed up for your newborn class and have just then joined your sleep membership community every year. And it's been super helpful.
Yes, which I want to chat a little bit about today and just how you've approached sleep, but we'll dive into all the things, but grateful to have you in the
Yes,
community.
thank you.
So today we're talking about Leo, who she mentioned is about to turn 3, and he was 2.5 when you went through the 3 Days to Smoother Bedtimes challenge. Can you describe the bedtime challenges or resistance that you were dealing with when you decided to sign up for the challenge?
Yes, Leo all of a sudden sort of got his voice and became super, through tantrums. He always said no. He didn't even want to go upstairs to go to bed. He fought what pajamas he wanted to wear. He fought what books we read. He actually fought us putting him down to sleep. So we had to put him in, take him out, put him in, take him out. I know, and it was, I'm sure that's against all of the rules, but like it was whatever we could do to like get him to go to sleep. And sometimes we would just have to eventually give up and put him in his crib and just say, good night, you're safe, have a good night. And he would cry. And sometimes it would take him over an hour to fall asleep by the time he settled down and then actually like went to sleep. So it was all bad. And I actually, with me, he was a little better. With my husband, he was a nightmare. Because my husband and I, we each take turns. Like one night I will put him to bed, the next night my husband will. And we've done this since he was a baby, just so we could each have our own time. And I'm not always going to be home every night. So we
Yeah.
wanted to make sure the duties were shared in that regard, just so he would be used to each one of us putting him to bed. So he was very much more resistant with my husband. I don't know why.
I think that's noteworthy.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and even sometimes to this day, he'll be a little bit more frustrating with my husband.
So I'm
I don't know why.
curious, were you guys on the same page about how you handled bedtime as far as the bedtime steps, like what the bedtime ideally would look like.
Yes.
And then were you on the same page with how you were navigating the resistance, or were you both kind of like, well, we're not sure what to do, so we're both trying our own thing? I guess the reason I asked that is I'm also curious, did he view one of you as like, this person seems like they know what they're doing more than the other?
It's funny you say
Or
that,
you
yeah.
have no idea why he was suddenly meeting resistance?
I definitely think I was a little bit more, I guess, disciplined in the
Mm-hmm.
bedtime routine. I did go in with, this is what we're doing. I tried to explain all the steps. And when he gave me resistance, I sort of just didn't give in. I think my
Mm-hmm.
husband gave in a little bit more. I think
Mm-hmm.
we both went in with the same, okay, this is what we're going to do. But then, like, my husband would, I think, give him the extra book, give him a little more
Mm-hmm.
water, let him get up and pick a book and that kind of thing. Like, let him get out of the chair and walk around, put him in his crib. And when he started to cry, I would pick him right back up and sing him another song and prolong the bedtime. I
Yep.
mean, I certainly would sometimes give him an extra book here and there, but eventually I just was like, okay, I think this is it. Like, you have to go to bed now. I think I
Yeah.
was a little bit more of the disciplinarian in
Yep.
that regard. I think my husband, I mean, I felt that too. I don't ever want him to cry going to bed. Nobody wants that.
Right.
It's hard for me to hear it. So I think he was just wanted to make sure he was okay. And then, he'd come back down and he was still crying. So he's like, I'm going to go back up there. And I was like, no, just let him like
Yeah.
settle. He can do it himself. He's been doing it for years. Like, this is what we went through for the first 6 months of his life to get him to this point. So yeah, I definitely think maybe I was a little bit more harder in
Yeah.
there with him than
And
my
it's
husband.
not, by no means am I trying to throw your husband under the bus. I mean,
No,
we
neither am I.
navigate this in my household as well. My husband, I would say, I don't know if it's, I could tell you're struggling to find the description because I feel this way in my house. Sometimes I feel like, is it because he has a more tender heart than I do? Or
I
is it
know.
because he's a little more scared of meeting an intense reaction? And I think
I
it's
think it could be a
probably,
little bit of that, a
yeah,
little bit
I
of
think
both.
it could be
Yeah.
a little bit of that because we still deal with this in my house, only with
Yeah.
my one tester. And there are
Interesting.
times where I'm like, no, really, you got to just say, no, not two more pages.
Hmm.
No, we're gonna, but it's hard for some people, I think, who are really uncomfortable with confrontation.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think everyone can relate to that struggle, but I think it's worth talking about because my husband often meets more resistance than I do
Hmm.
because of that. And then often when it's parents who do have a history of both people putting kids to bed, for some kids, that's enough. Like if they're accustomed to having both parents, then both parents are going to have a similar experience. But for other kids, it's like they're so dang smart that if they
Hmm.
see there's a little more wiggle room with this one parent, then they're going to push, 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 push. And so,
And he definitely did that. He definitely did that, I think, with my husband more than me. I
yeah,
definitely like I'm not, the perfect and I wasn't I
none of
definitely
us
gave in
are.
here and there, but not as much as he did. I don't
Yeah.
think.
Well, and as
So I think
you,
Leo's smart, so he knew that exactly.
yeah, and as you noted, it's not like you were new to sleep. It's not like you joined the challenge and it was the first time
Mm-mm.
you had addressed sleep hygiene. You've been on
Yeah.
top of Leo's sleep for a long time, and he has a good history of having really solid sleep habits. And
Hmm.
so I'm sure this whole struggle, and I think he said he found his voice, which I think is so accurate. Um, it felt like a big regression and a big shift. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
you know this, but I often talk about natural sleep talent. And for anyone listening to the podcast today who has not heard me talk about natural sleep talent, I really compare sleep talent to athleticism. And so we all know kids, or even our own experience as a child and as an adult, who some people are really naturally athletic. And then some people would say they kind of have two left feet. And then there's that huge spectrum in between. And it's very similar with sleep. We all have friends who say, I just put my baby down and they slept. I don't know why everyone thinks this is so hard. And then we have
Yeah.
people, and I work with lots of people who say, I can never put my baby down. They won't sleep. And so as we think about Leo's kind of sleep history, I'm curious how you would describe his natural sleep talent and just a little bit about what you feel like your sleep journey has been with him.
So I don't think he was a natural born sleeper by any means. It took us a long time to get him to the point where he could sleep fully through the night without any issues. He was actually born 3 weeks early, and he was a little baby when he was born in the hospital for a couple weeks after he was born. And we had to put him to sleep and wake him up every 3 hours to feed him in the beginning because he was so little. He had to get all those extra ounces in. So that was a challenge in its own right. So I think I'm not quite sure when I started with you, but it was like pretty much within the first 6 weeks I bought the newborn sleep because I wanted to give him at least the foundation and set him up. And he was never a kid that slept in a bassinet. He hated it. So we put him right in the crib about 3 or 4 weeks in, and he seemed to do better there. And I think after like 2 to 3 months, maybe we saw like stretches of like 5 hours. And then I think by 4 months, we saw stretches of maybe like 6. But we were still having to get up and give him those extra ounces of milk to get him in. I think once he was like 6 or 7 months was when we saw like a sleep through the night more often. But I think around between 8 and 10 months were like the hardest. I don't know, he had like a huge regression and he was up. We'd put him to sleep. I was always of the mentality I wanted him to sleep 7 to 7. That's kind of like how I grew up. My mother was very like on a schedule with me, and I sort of wanted to keep him on a schedule. And I know that you obviously preached about a schedule too in your, classes and other things that I've watched. So I sort of wanted to keep him on a schedule sleep-wise to get him to the point where he is now. But then at 8 months, he had a huge regression. And I was like, oh my God. He was like going to bed and like getting up at 11 and then getting up at like 3. And then he would get up sometimes at 5:30 and be up for the day. And then like we had to figure with the naps. And it was a long journey with the sleep. I think once he hit like 12 to 15 months is when I felt solid in his sleep. Like he would go to bed, no issues, and he would sleep until 6 or 7. He's kind of an early riser still, but he sleeps solid throughout the whole night. So I think the sleep training was definitely for him. I think if we had not done it, I think maybe we would have still had night wakings. We still more resistance to bedtime, more early wakings, all that kind of thing. And even when I had those things, even, between 12 months and 24 months, I still, throughout your like classes, your weekly chats and all that thing, I was able to sort of, he's doing this, what should I do? Give a plan. And then I was like able to implement it. So it's been helpful throughout the way, throughout the whole journey.
He's just such a great example that everyone's sleep experience is not going to be linear. So every child is not, I also meet these people and I'm always so envious of them. When I had my first, who'd say like, oh, we did sleep training. It took 2 days. And then they've been a perfect sleeper ever since. And I guess I could kind of say that about my second daughter. We didn't even do sleep training. The only regression she had was the 18-month sleep regression.
Oh, that's great.
But with my first, she's always kept me on my toes. And so I think it's always valuable for people who are like, why won't my child just keep sleeping like a rock star? Every path is going to be a little bit different depending on their kind of natural sleep talent. And so so you had some good sleep for a while. So this probably felt very troubling when you suddenly met this resistance.
Yes.
I'm curious, was it triggered, do you recall, by something specific? So often it could be illness or travel. Do you remember a trigger, and then was it like sudden, or did you feel like first it was one extra book and then it was I don't want to go upstairs? Did it feel sudden or gradual? And then do you have any recollection if there was a trigger, or you were like, this came out of nowhere, he just found his voice and started to push back, which is age appropriate? But I'm curious your thoughts on that regression when you look back on it.
I think it was a slow build. I definitely think his development like just kept going and going, and he definitely was like learning to talk more, learning to get his voice. And I think like maybe throughout the day he was able to get X, Y, and Z. So I think like it was a slow build. Like maybe I can do it at night. Like I don't want to go to bed. I'm having a good time, and just thought like maybe I could just say no and see what they say. And like, what are they going to do? Like they can't, I'm going to start crying, and what are they going to do? So I think he was just it was definitely a slow build. It wasn't like we went on a trip and then we came home.
Okay.
We had not gone on a trip. We're not like people that go out every night and like do things and are like every night have activities. Like he's our only child. So we're pretty much on a routine with him. So it was definitely a slow build. I definitely noticed it. Like he'd want to read another book, or he'd want to get up and pick his own book, or he'd want some more water, or he'd like sing another song, or and like I think we just started to keep doing it,
Yeah.
and then eventually, the bedtime was like coming in at like 45 minutes, and we're like, we gotta like wrap it up here. Especially on bath nights, it was even longer because the
Yeah.
bath and then the getting ready and all that stuff. Or I don't want to wear these pajamas, or like he just throw a fit about whatever. So I think it was definitely a slow build.
Yeah, and people often say if it wasn't triggered by a trip or an illness, which then it kind of feels very clear what happened. But then other people will say to me, well, I don't know how I got here. And I think what happens, even 18 months on, is
Hmm.
they do test out as they should. It's so age appropriate. Like, well, what if I say no to this? Or what if I ask for an extra book? Or I mean, it's just like you and I, if we're watching the TV and you're like, I kind of want to watch 15 more minutes. And so they test out that flexing their resistance or their thoughts or opinions. And then it seems so harmless when you've had good sleep habits for 6, 9, 12 months. And
Hmm.
you're like, yeah,
Hmm.
sure. What's one more book or one more song? Or this is so cute and endearing. Of course, I want to read one
Yes.
more book.
I want to cuddle with you. Exactly.
Of
Yes.
course. And so you give one, and I always say it either produces curiosity of like, well, what else could I get? Or for
Right.
some kids, I think if they're tired, it can actually produce some anxiety of like, wait, there's other things on the table. Oh my gosh, what else is going to happen? And then it can almost be irrational behavior, depending on the child. But that's how you can go from one day I sang one extra song to, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, they don't want to go upstairs. And their whole mindset shifts. And it sounds like that's really at the end of the day where you ended up, where he just no longer had positive feelings about going to bed.
Right. And I think I think I remember his teacher mentioning to me like he had some resistance doing activities at school. Like he was starting to say, no, I don't want to do that. Or and she would just say, okay, like you can sit over here when you're ready. We're doing this. So she sort of helped me navigate. Like he's starting to say no and like want to do his own thing and be stubborn, which I guess is age appropriate, but
Totally. I am
yeah.
curious when you got things to a better place with bedtime, which we'll talk a little bit about the changes you made, but did they notice any difference at school or did that behavior still, which is age appropriate, but was she still kind of reporting similar behavior? Or I'm
It ebbs and
curious.
flows. It
Yeah,
still ebbs
okay.
and flows. I think it definitely ebbs and flows. But she's, wasn't like concerned about it. She just said he's starting to like, he needs like time to transition to other things.
Yep.
He's not just like someone that can go, okay, we're gonna play soccer. Oh, we're gonna go to the bat. We're gonna go to the tub now. Oh, we're gonna go to the pool now. He needs like, okay, Leo, we're gonna do this for 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna go here, or like we're gonna have lunch, and then we're gonna go to bed. He's one of those kids that sort of needs like a plan. Like this is what we're
Yes.
doing today. He needs he's a plan. He's a planner like his mom. I'm a planner too. So maybe that's where he gets it from.
Totally. Yeah. So that's another noteworthy thing is transitions are hard for young children in
Yeah.
general, I think. And then particularly around this age group, I really found 3 to 4 being the most challenging window
That's
for
what I've heard.
transitions. Yeah.
I can't wait.
Can't wait. So transitions are hard for many, many kids. And then for some kids, they're very hard. And I have one of those as well, where one, it's like transitions aren't too challenging except for between 3 and 4. And then the other where still transitions are tricky for them. So I think that's noteworthy as well.
I definitely think he also is attached to the both of us. Like, obviously he's the only child, so he gets all the affection, all the love, all the attention. So I think like leaving us for the night, he doesn't want to do that 'cause he's having fun with us.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing at school. Like he doesn't want to be dropped off sometimes. He doesn't like, I don't want to go to school today. It's like, well, this is what we're doing today. But then he's fine after 5 minutes, but it's the initial like going to school transition of that, which is hard.
Totally.
So I guess it's all age appropriate though.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait till he turns 3 for the next year.
Maybe he'll
So
surprise us.
maybe, yeah.
So, when you went through the challenge, I'm curious what change that was recommended through there that you thought, I know I need to make, but I'm most nervous about making. Was there one in particular that you felt the most angst about? Because change is hard when we know we're going to meet
Yeah.
resistance and we're already meeting resistance.
I think the saying no and like meaning it and not like saying no and then say, okay, well, okay, one more book and then we're going to go to bed. Like, I think the saying no was the biggest for me and my husband, I think
Yeah.
too. Like, more for him, I think, because he always was like, okay, I'll give you the extra so you don't cry kind of thing. So I think saying no and like firmly saying no, like, that was the hardest for me.
And was the reaction when you both committed to, we're not going to do the extra book? Let's take that example. Was the reaction as intense as you had anticipated? And then I'm curious how long it took before you felt like there was some level of like, oh, no, they are restabilizing my routine. Like they're not going to read the extra book.
Yeah, and I think it took a solid week, I
Okay.
want to say. I definitely noticed changes after like day 3 or 4, but I
Mm-hmm.
think like a solid week, and then he was like really good and like understood the plan of the bedtime, and he's not going to get extra this, that, and whatever.
And would you say the saying no was the change that had the most significant positive impact on his bedtime, or was there another change that you felt like, oh, that was the change that really helped us move things back in the right direction?
I definitely think the we changed the hour before he goes to bed. That was
Mm-hmm.
big for us. We like told the grandparents we're not doing FaceTimes anymore. We shut the TV off at 6 o'clock after his dinner. He usually comes home at like 4:30, quarter 5. We have dinner between 5 and 5:45, and then the TV goes off at 6, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it. And we like do blocks or a puzzle, or we just sort of like read books. We kind of like just chill. We're not like running around. We're not wrestling. We don't go outside. Like, it wound him down a little bit. And also, we started instituting a timer for bed.
Oh, yeah.
We put a timer on our phone with some fun music that he likes when it goes off. And I definitely feel like that. Like, we have him actually push the button and turn it on.
Okay.
It's like, okay, it's a 10-minute bedtime, clock. So he knows at that time that it's time to go upstairs. And he'll say, it's time to go upstairs, or it's time to go for a bath. It took obviously a few days for him to get used to that, but I think those two changes were the biggest for us.
So he, after resisting it, really did settle into liking the structure.
He did. And then, we would definitely tell him the plan. We would, say we chose to get him in his pajamas, brush his teeth, and then we're going to read 4 books and sing 2 songs. And that's the plan. And that's what we still do today.
Yep.
Each one of us. We sing different songs, we read different books, but that's what we do.
And given what you've said and what I know about him, I'm guessing I know the answer to this question. But even after going through the challenge, it sounds like within a week you felt really positive changes. I'm guessing even since then, he pushes back.
Oh yeah. There are nights that he definitely gives us a struggle, but we both of us know how to rein him in. And I think when I see the struggle is when I'm like, okay, maybe we like, I don't know. I think a couple weeks ago we came home at like 6:30. It was a little bit late. We kind of like rushed the bath, and like he didn't have time to wind down.
Mm-hmm.
And then he didn't really get that like 10 minutes before the transition to bedtime. It was kind of like we came home, he had 5 minutes, we went up for a bath. We tried to get him in bed by 7:15 so he wasn't too late on his schedule. So I definitely notice it on nights like that where the schedule is a bit off, that
Yeah.
he will be more resistant. Or maybe like his nap was short at school, those kind of things. But
Mm-hmm.
like, it's definitely way less than it was. It's not every night. My husband, like, he'll put him to bed and he was like, oh yeah, that was so easy. He'll be laughing. And he, like, you put him down and he just kind of like goes right to sleep within 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. And I think there's some power to knowing why things aren't going well. So it sounds like throughout the process you gain knowledge as to what helps him sleep, like the solid hour before bedtime and the practices you have for that hour and the structure around his bedtime. And that doesn't mean you're going to be perfect every night. And I
No.
love to tell people this: teaching your child healthy sleep habits and figuring out what helps them sleep well or makes it hard for them to sleep does not mean we are perfect all the time. And
No.
it is totally reasonable to have nights where you get home at 6:30.
Yeah.
But then when things aren't going well, I find there's some comfort for me in knowing why it's not going well, so that I
Yes.
don't think, what is happening? Why is this happening? And you kind of know how to bounce back. I mean, we recently had, after coming home from a week-long trip, one of my children completely unraveled at bedtime.
Oh,
And they're older. And I literally
yeah,
had to say, I'm going to give you a hug. I'm going to get you to bed. This is feeling really hard because we are so overtired. And tomorrow, all
yeah.
of this will feel easier. Now, you're not quite to that level with his development that you can have
Right.
such a sound conversation. But even though I told her, she was still unraveling. And then
Yeah.
the next day I said, do we, we feel better today? And we were going through the bedtime routine and kind of laughing about it. But I love that it sounds like at least now when you have the off nights, you can say, I know why this is happening. And then you guys can get back on track.
Yeah, and I think setting him up in the beginning and like teaching him to sleep independently and be able to fall asleep independently was one of the biggest things for me. I wanted him to, selfishly, I didn't want to have to be in there for 2 hours, like holding his hand, or I wanted him to be able to do it on his own. And it was super hard. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I flew right through the courses and it was so easy when he was a little baby to just like let him cry, but like going through those really rough moments and even like the 3 day success for bedtime class, like, the first few times that we had to like actually institute the plan and the saying no and it wasn't easy, but it's gotten us to this point where he has a much smoother transition to bedtime and a much better association with bedtime. And he actually likes going to bed and likes his blankets. And now he's got a million stuffed animals in his bed because he's that age now. So it's just been super helpful.
Well, he has that great foundation. So even when you
Yes,
go off
that helps as
track,
well.
you
Yeah.
have that foundation of independent sleep to go back to, which is so important. And then
Yes,
you do get your evenings for everyone to kind of regroup, because hours
absolutely.
at bedtime in the room, that only not only does it cut into how much sleep our children get, but I think it really cuts into just our own well-being as
Yes.
parents of not having that time to refuel, connect with each other, get ready for the
Decompress.
next day, have
All
some
the
alone
things.
time, sleep. I mean, which ultimately affects our children as well. I mean, it's
Yes.
really affects the whole family when the bedtime is a hot mess.
Agree, agree. And I'm not going to say it's like, perfect every night, but I think like we're on like a 90-10, like maybe 10%. It's depending on the day or what we're doing or whatever, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
overall, it's been night and day.
I love
So I'm
it.
glad I did it.
I'm so glad. So, if you had one piece of advice to share with a parent of a toddler or preschooler who, let's say you sit by at the park and they start lamenting about how challenging bedtime is with their kiddo, I'm curious what would be the first thing you would say? You should consider what?
Hiring you?
Oh,
So,
perfect.
I actually always say like if people are having problems, I always recommend you because I think you are great.
Oh, you're
So
so sweet.
I've told a lot of my friends, that you've been super helpful in the foundation and everything else. But I guess I would just tell them to sort of sit down and like maybe draw out your day and like see what your child's schedule is and maybe then after that like if your child is not really napping but you're putting them to bed at 8 o'clock, maybe they're just so overtired it's not working for you, so maybe like you need to just adjust the bedtime a little bit based on their daytime activities and if they're taking a nap or not. I guess just sort of like, yeah, look at your day and see like what you're doing and what your child's patterns are and what they have been. And then maybe working with a sleep coach or, I always like say I have a lot of knowledge because I've gone through all these classes, so I'm happy to like bounce off ideas off
Yeah.
or anything like that. But I definitely think I would say, you're not alone. Number one, like this isn't everyone has sleep problems with their child. Some maybe don't, but overall, there's always something that might be like coming up, even if it might be minute or if it's huge. So I guess I would just kind of take a step back and look at your child's patterns, look at your child's history, look at what they're doing at school, what they're doing with other people who take care of them, and sort of maybe make a new plan. Like we're going to institute this, and maybe not try doing everything at once, but definitely do like little steps every day to help them maybe get back on track or find their sleep sweet spot. We've sort of found Leo's sleep sweet spot, so maybe you can try to find your sweet spot for yours.
I think that's a good point of taking a step back just to look at schedules and routines, because at the end of the day, even with my own kids, even not related to sleep, when things get dicey, I always come back to take a look at what part of this is not working, and is there a structure or a change to our routine that could help them settle, because kids just thrive so much with structure and routine.
They do. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like we only have the one, so obviously we just have one. But many parents have like older kids that are in activities, or like more than one little kid. It just, it's a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy, but maybe if you can take a step back and see what's going on in the bigger picture.
Not about being perfect. It's about just figuring out what works best, getting to that as often as we can, and not expecting our kids to be robots or for us to be robots, but just learning. Knowledge is power. So the more we know about what sets them up, the better off they will be and we will be. And then as they get older, you can hand down that knowledge. So my kids now could tell you, when I do that, it makes it hard for me to sleep. Even though they still want to do it. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Oh, yeah.
They may do it anyway, but it's a process.
They'll know the next day that they're going to have a problem, or that night they're going to have a problem. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for being open to sharing your experience with everyone. I was so grateful when you volunteered, when I asked for challenge participants to share their experience. And I'm so glad that our paths crossed a few years ago, and that you've trusted me to support your family along their sleep journey. So thank you for coming on today.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was great. I wish parents Godspeed. Best of luck to everybody.
We all need some.
Everybody stay strong. You got this.
And for any of you listening today who feel like you've been dreading bedtime with your 2.5 to 6-year-old, don't miss out on my free challenge that's starting on September 4th. In just a few days, or in Jessica's example, in about a week, you can start to have smoother bedtimes with your little one. You can register at the link in the show notes. All right, Jessica, I'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.